because it's music, and it's actually really good art. It totally is. Which brings us to our next guest. He appears at all kinds of these music festivals, my friends. All kinds. His name is Bob Lefsetz, and people bring him in because he knows how to pick a fight. But he does it by being smart. He certainly has strong opinions, strong insight in the world of music. He had this thing called a letter. First, his letter was like a hard copy. Then it became an email newsletter. He's outspoken. Tens of thousands of people listen to what he says. His name is Bob Lefsetz. I don't always agree with him, but I love him. Here's his bio. All right, so if you want to know what's going on inside the music industry, well, then you got to read Bob Lefsetz. At one time, Lefsetz was an entertainment lawyer and a major label consultant, but he made his name with something called the Lefsetz Letter, and a lot of people read it. Tens of thousands of subscribers, including most of the heavy hitters in the music industry. Big names like Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, and Bryan Adams and Quincy Jones, they all read his stuff, and they all listen to his podcast or are involved in some way. Why? Well, he bullshits no one. And in a world of really, really big business, Lefsetz seems to be the guy on the side of the artist and the true art. He writes about everything important in the music business. Downloading, copyright protection, iTunes and the Apple monolith, even the quality of the music itself and the way it's marketed. He writes whatever he wants, regardless if the big boys and girls don't like it. And here he is, the man, Mr. Bob Lefsetz. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you around. So, let's say you were going to a student day where, you know, job day, and you'd have to go and stand in front of the class, and somebody said, "What do you do, Bob?"
Well, I thought you were going to ask me, what do I tell them? How would they make it in the music business?
No. What would you tell them? Like, what you do?
Well, you know, I always tell people, you know, what is your qualification for what you do? I've listened to a lot of records. I was a big music fan. Music drove the culture in the 60s and 70s. Doesn't right now. I wish it did. And what I do is I sit in front of my very expensive Mac every day, and I get inspired. Did you pay for it
at least, or was it free?
I paid for. I got a discount on the. I don't want to do 10 minutes on my Mac, which I probably could.
Say, that's why you said Mac, because you got it.
Because you know it's a religion, and I've been using a Mac. That's how I started this newsletter. I was reading Billboard, which is a trade publication about the music business. And said, "This is terrible. I could do a better job." And I just had seen these ads for desktop publishing with a Mac, and that's how I got started 20 years ago. And it's a religion. We all need something to believe in. Right. I used to believe in the music. You know, I'd rather go to the Mac Daily News than most of the music sites today. But
what's the music's not worse today, is it? Or is it just that it's harder to find it?
It's an interesting thing because the means of distribution and exhibition are in the hands of the proletariat, i.e. the average person. As a result, you can make it and get it distributed, but finding it is so hard. We live in a Tower of Babel society now, which is very depressing. I come from America. We have what are now basically 5 networks. When there used to be 3 networks on TV, they had 92% of the audience. Now the 5 networks have 31 point something. And there are 1 million cable channels, okay? So I watched this show about Mount Everest, climbing Mount Everest. I have yet to find someone who has seen that show. Where we want some collegiality, we want to be in this together. Same thing with music. It's like going to the show. We're there together. So if I'm into something, it's always cool to be into something and turn other people on to it. Yeah. But if we're all into different stuff, we can't communicate. So the future is some kind of filter that ultimately tells us we do want that. We want someone to clean through the crap and tell us what's good.
Yeah, but do you think that is it just that we want choice, we don't want that much choice?
Yes.
And it's just that simple.
I can riff on that, but you nailed it exactly.
Well, now obviously, music is my religion. That's what I spend most of my time listening to when I go to bed at night. And I find that the struggle is finding good stuff. But I just latch into a couple of outlets where I think I'm not going to be led down the garden path, and I listen to it. But for you, doesn't it go beyond just a good song? Like, you even went after Arcade Fire because they did an article in the New York Times, right? Or the magazine.
The Arcade Fire was broken by a website called pitchforkmedia.com. Yeah. The legendary story is Pitchfork Media gave it a rave. The gig in Manhattan sold out when there were only fewer than 20 albums in Manhattan. So people bought it purely based on Pitchfork Media. That's something that music fans know about. 2 weeks ago, they had a story in the New York Times Magazine. What audience is this? Who are they appealing to?
But anybody, because the people who are writing the article perhaps think that more people want to hear Arcade Fire.
You know, I got a lot of philosophies about this, but the big issue in the 60s and 70s, you could not get television coverage. A good analogy is video games, okay? Video games far outgross movies and music. Now, right now it's changing, but prior to about the last 20 months with electronic arts kind of going downhill, okay, People are playing these video games like Halo, et cetera, et cetera. There's a vast amount of money involved. No coverage in the mainstream press. There's not a video game channel. We don't see things about video games, et cetera. So the point was, this is how music used to be. Then music merged with the mainstream, okay, and it lost all the religion. So what I want is something to believe in. And everyone says, oh, it doesn't really matter if people do endorsements. I need to believe in the record. We were just walking here, and I quoted this old Carla Bonoff track because the woman we were with is trying to find Mr. Right. And she's not frivolous. It's not like she's going to bar. She would like to find the right person. Yeah. And I quoted a lyric, and it said, they say just once in life, you find someone who's right, but love's so hard to find in this state of mind. I hope I'll know him if I've ever near. When I see the woman who writes that song around Los Angeles, my heart pitters-patters. Not because she's beautiful, not because she's rich. She wrote that lyric. Whereas if I see her hoard out to some kind of hair care products, it undercuts that.
Well, right. No, but there's the other side, which is, I mean, there's lots of great bands that you first hear about because radio sucks and TV sucks, so the only place to find out about a band now is in a commercial. You're like, oh, what's that song? And somebody Googles and goes, bullshit. No, dude, the Walkman is a band that most people didn't hear about until the Saturn commercial came out. And when the Walkman released when you heard that commercial, you go, what the song? You Google it. And you go, oh, that's the Walkman. And people hear about it that way.
No, the ultimate thing is,
let them down.
Are we breaking acts or are we breaking tracks? That's one of the big things that changed with the late MTV era.
We're breaking tracks now.
If you break a track, then ultimately the track may be successful and you have a very brief career. The key is to have the bands. So when we get back to your issue of publicity, okay, it was very difficult to get publicity in the 60s and 70s, but the major labels figured out the publicity angle in the 90s. And what they found is you can go on the Today Show, go on television, you can do all the things to get the message out. There used to be the axiom that there was no such thing as bad publicity. Now it is more important to say no and to focus on your core. If you are good, people will tell everybody about it. I mean, if somebody could just have a band like the Beatles now, with people with good voices, good harmonies.
There's only one. There's like 5 of those bands in history. Right?
Okay, forget Beatles. If someone had someone who could sing with good changes in melodies, the band would blow up. But it's not hip enough for the purveyors.
Foo Fighters, White Stripes. Those bands?
Come on, the White Stripes, it's a gimmick. The guy always wears the same damn clothes. They only got 2 people in the band.
So that's all right. Okay. It's damn good songs, though.
No, the songs are not that good.
Yes, they are. They're amazing.
If you go back to the very first Zeppelin album, okay, Communication Breakdown, Good Times, Bad Times, Black Mountain Side, I can name off the top of my head the White Stripes don't have 3 songs that good. I like the way it sounds.
Wow, but let me ask you this question. You know, sometimes you never love anybody more than you loved your first love. That idea.
Yes, I understand.
Is that possible when it comes to the way we start looking at music? If you've been around music long enough, we're just going to love those bands.
Because if you go to the house of someone under the age of 20, the biggest bands are Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin.
Well, because they're geniuses.
Excuse me? Geniuses? Okay. Did they stop making geniuses? We can't have geniuses anymore?
It appears. Kurt Cobain. Every generation has people.
I would say, I use an analogy, there was only one Renaissance, but they didn't stop painting after that. We had Picasso. Okay, we could have a new Picasso. The point is the people revolutionizing the business are not on television, not on the airwaves, because they don't have to go through the system. There's bands sleeping on the floor, the managers sleeping there too, who are going to revolutionize the business. We just don't know yet. And there will be great stuff because the market, there's a giant vacuum of this. So we don't want to see something on Saturday Night Live. We don't want to see something pervade in the New York Times Magazine like we did with Arcade Fire. We want something we can believe in.
I wish we could talk for another week. Thanks, man.
Okay, thanks a lot,
George. Bob Lefsetz, everybody, right on.